Hey everyone, I'm Dina and I'm here with my friend Kevin.
Hey Dina, and good to be with you all.
And we are here right now. In this video, we're going to be talking about empathetic listening, specifically because of everything that's going on right now. The Black community obviously is suffering right now and is in a lot of pain in the mourning season, a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of different feelings and emotions related to the death of George Floyd and other Black males who have lost their life as a result of police brutality that has occurred in our nation. And during this time, I know for me personally, I have been experiencing all kinds of emotions, and I am not even an emotional person at all. But I've experienced pain, hurt, anger, betrayal, a lot of different feelings in the last couple of weeks. And I know for me, what has been extremely helpful is the spaces in my life where I am being listened, where my voice is being heard. And I know I've been hearing a lot of African Americans, a lot of Black people say they don't feel heard, they don't feel seen, they don't feel like their voices matter, what they're saying doesn't matter, no one's listening. And for me, I've felt that way before, but in this time, I've been grateful to be in spaces, my work environment, which I would have never expected would have been a safe place for me, has been a place where my non-Black coworkers have listened to me. Like they literally canceled 3 of our meetings at work to let the Black voice be heard and our experience. And I was able to share, and we cried together. And they didn't say anything; they just listened to me. And I had never experienced that. And I never been in a setting where people of the other race like just simply listened to what I was saying and what I've been through and what I was feeling. And it's been so healing for me. And the reason why Kevin is here is because he's also been a person in my life who has listened and listened to the pain and is able to like actually understand and maybe not be able to walk in my shoes or feel what I feel, but has listened to me. And that has been so helpful. So I want to ask you, Kevin, like why is it so important, do you feel right now, for whites to listen to what Blacks are saying, despite what we may disagree on, despite our political disagreements, our religious disagreements? Why do you think it's so important right now for whites to listen to what Blacks are saying right now?
Well, Dina, I think it's just like what you explained, as you have a space to be able to speak truth and then have someone actually listen and understand. That's what actually brings healing. I was impacted by Bryan Stevenson, who says before there can be any reconciliation, there first has to be truth telling. The Black Eyed Peas actually, in their song "Where Is the Love," that line, the truth is kept secret, it's swept under the rug. If you've never known truth, then you've never known love.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you can really speak what's on your heart, then it's going to be empty. And so I think one thing that we can do is just really listen. And that's what I hope my white community can be committed to at this time.
Absolutely. And I think what I feel is happening is that it feels like some people want to rush to the reconciliation or the restoration phase. And I know we both connected because we're both social workers and we both have a passion for restorative practices, restorative conversations, restorative communication. And in that practice, which is an evidence-based practice, you can't just rush to restoration. You actually have to have conversations, and there has to be confession, and there has to be repentance, and then there has to be reconciliation, then restoration. And so we want to skip over the hard parts. It's hard to have conversations. It's hard to sit down and share hard truths and empathize and deal with this pain. But it's so necessary. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, it is so necessary. I was just thinking, like, so I'm married and I have 2 kids. And if my wife was to ever come up to me and just like pour her heart out, And my response to her was, that's not true. That would shut down the whole conversation. So listening means being able to really try to, even if it's not, even if the voice in your head saying, I don't know if this is true or not, well, take that out, because that means you're not really listening. Really listening means you respect the honesty of the person who is trying to bring you in to what they're truly feeling. And I think that's something that we can do if we are committed to empathetically listening.
Absolutely. So in this video, we actually wanted to provide some steps, because I feel like some people, if you know better, you'll do better, right? And so some people just don't know how to listen. They've never had to listen. They don't listen. They don't listen in their personal relationships. And I think I want to be understanding that some people don't even listen in their marriages. So we want people to come and listen to our entire race, and they don't even listen to themselves. And they don't know how, right? So we're going to just provide some quick steps in this video to empathetic listening, what it is and how we can actually model it and apply it in our personal relationships, and specifically with the Black and white community together, right? So I'm going to kind of give the step, and we can kind of go through it together. If you want to add in some points, I'll add in some points. Number one, so the first step to empathetic listening is make the conversation about the person in front of you. So what does that look like? For a white, like a white person, like talking to a Black person or listening to a Black person.
Right. So there's this term called whataboutism. So oftentimes when this happens, where a police officer kills a Black male, well, a lot of times white people will come back and be like, yeah, but what about all the Black criminals that kill Black criminals? That's way more frequent. That's called whataboutism, and you're not focusing on what's right in front of you, the moment of injustice.
That's really good. And that is one of the hurtful things, the conversations that keeps coming up. It's like deflecting away from what we're talking about right now. And I'm not even going to get into that, but the goal of empathetic listening first is make the conversation about the person in front of you. And I think for me, that also means that if we're having a conversation, some people do this and they don't even realize they're doing it, is they start talking about themselves. Like, oh yeah, when I was hurt before, I lost a family member. This pain is like, we're not trying to compare pains. We don't need to necessarily hear past stories. This is something totally different. You've never been Black. You never had this experience of this particular experience. And I think I wouldn't even do that to anyone who lost someone. If someone lost their dad, I lost my dad, but I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, I lost my dad. You'll get through it. It'll be fine. I've been through that. I would listen to the person in front of me. At that moment, I am not the one that's in pain. The person in front of me is experiencing pain, and I want to make it about them and not about myself.
That's right. Spot on.
Okay, so the second step to empathetic listening is avoid distractions. And I think that's really important. Is that when I remember when my coworkers were talking to me, everyone was intently watching me, and it was on Zoom, obviously, but everyone was looking at me, and I had their undivided attention, and I knew they were listening to me because some of them started crying with me. It wasn't about them, and they were sad. They were hearing my story from childhood, and it was impacting them because they were listening to me, and their attention was on me. They weren't on their phone and things like that. I don't know if you want to add anything about avoiding distraction.
Yeah, if I would just add to that, Dina, that would mean that you are totally present. Because if somebody is sharing a part that's even vulnerable, like this hurts, and there's a callousness or a distractedness, you immediately would tone out and say, I'm not going to share with this person because they obviously don't care. So be present without the distraction.
Exactly. So number 3, listen actively and refrain from criticism or advice giving. I'll let you go.
Yeah. So you could have somebody that thinks they're the expert. And so they start talking and, oh yeah, I watched this movie and I read this book and here's what this means. Well, no, you're jumping the gun, and you might even know things, but you don't know this person. It goes back to without distractions, and that also would identify that you're not listening to understand, you're listening to be heard, listening to be
Right.
heard.
It's really good. And also with the like giving advice or criticizing, like right now, sometimes it's not what you say, it's when you say it and how you say it. And a lot of things are being said with a lack of empathy, even if it's facts, even if you have statistics.
Yeah.
Right now, we know what the statistics are. We're saying that we're hurting, and we want to, like that's the problem right now. And it's like, get over your hurt. These are the statistics. And it's like sometimes it's just not. It's a way to do things, and it's a way to approach people. And the sensitivity, just humans caring about one another and what they're experiencing, right? So I don't know. Did you have anything else you wanted to add to that point?
Yeah, on the statistic standpoint, I think that's what frustrates a lot of people. It's like you don't even get, not even a week, it's not even 2 days go by, and people are ready to go back with their statistics and try to, like you gave the example earlier, if I lose my dad, and you can say, well, my friend had it worse because he lost his dad when he was only 10. And it's just, that's what statistics do in this moment. Now,
Mm-hmm.
is there a place to have that conversation eventually? Sure. But that just means that there's this lack of understanding and empathy to do it that soon, right after.
Exactly. And the same thing with when someone loses someone that they love. If we're at the funeral, even if we know that they may have not been following the law, like the way that we want them to, right? At that moment, their life, they passed away. Their mother, they have mothers. They might be fathers, and despite what society thinks about them, we don't know who they were. You never lived in a home with them. You don't know what they were like as a father. We dehumanize them with statistics, right? And it's hurtful and it's painful to the family, and we feel that pain because even though it may seem like it's just one family, we all in the Black community, we have a cousin that we can relate to, and we think about our brothers, and we think about, this is, if you treated George Floyd like this, you would definitely treat my brother like this, and then I
Yeah.
have a problem with that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's how I feel, and we get defensive because it's
Yeah.
like we have family members who remind us they're Black men in the Black community, and so regardless to what their history is or where they've been, you don't know their story, you don't know the why. And in the trauma informed practices, we go from look at them, like what is wrong with them to what happened to them. That's where we want to shift the paradigm from what is wrong with them to what happened to them, so we can get to the root of a problem if we're being solution focused. But if we're just being nitpicky and you just want to be judgmental, you're going, look at them, you should be doing this, versus what happened to them, and let's get to the root of problems so we can stop this from happening.
Yeah, 100%. As you were saying that too, it reminded me when President Obama said, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin. And it's this, the Black community is telling us it's so much bigger than just George Floyd. So George Floyd is one of the current tragedies, but he's symbolic and representative of the pain of an entire community. And when we dismiss that flippantly, that hurts. And good listening would never do that.
Absolutely. The other point with empathetic listening is paraphrase and ask open-ended questions. And I need to speak to this because I felt like when we connected, there was a status that you made, and when I was experiencing a lot of distress because of a video that I watched, and I wanted to like respond and be like, and just retaliate, but I didn't. I just I just went and prayed about it because I was so upset and I didn't want to be upset anymore. And the next day, and it was like a answered prayer, honestly. The next day, you made a status, which we weren't even friends. I don't even know, someone shared your status, but when I didn't see your profile, but when I scrolled through, when I was reading the status, I was like, this is every single thing that I wanted to say, but it's better than how I would have said it. And it was like everything I was feeling, I saw in the status, and it was like, it took like a burden off of me. Like I didn't have to fight. You know how like you feel like you need to fight.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone comes in and is like, go sit down, I'll fight this battle for you. And I felt like you did that for me. Like, it was like, I wanted to fight. And it was like, after you did that, I honestly was like, oh, he got it. Like, you get it. And so, but what it was, you were able to hear, or somehow you were able to encompass what Blacks might be feeling right now and write it in a status. And it was so profound because I was sure that a Black person had wrote that status. But when I scrolled up and saw your profile, it was a white male, and I was just completely floored. I honestly sent it to my friend, like, I can't believe this. Like, he gets it. And I literally said that, like, he gets it. You were able to listen and then paraphrase and spread to your community what the Black community was feeling. Can you kind of like speak to that? Like, how are you able to do that? How can others do that?
Yeah, well, so I do marriage counseling sometimes. And as you were speaking this example, I just thought of this. A lot of times couples speak past each other. And so if we give the instruction, I want you to be committed to listening so that you can paraphrase it back. And if you tell them, is this what you mean? They'll say yes. And if that's what happens, man, there's breakthroughs in the marriage. And we see it like we're talking in this conversation. You resonated with the part like I expressed. This white people is what some of our Black friends are feeling. And thankfully, as I said that, it was accurate to your experience. And that was my hope in that.
Thank you again. But yeah, so that's really powerful. And that is where healing can take place, is when not only are you listening, but you can listen to what I say and repeat it back to me. That shows you were really listening, right? And repeat it back to me accurately and actually care that it's accurate, right? So that's really powerful, and something that we should all learn how to do, because I think it can bring so much healing, even in just our personal relationships, right? Like you said, with marriage counseling. Okay.
If I could just say one point, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The meme culture that we're in right now is funny. I laugh at memes all the time, and privately I might think, man, that's such a good point. But there's a danger sometimes, especially if we're trying to have a conversation across political or ideological boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be careful about saying something that might be our truth that isn't accurate. It is not an accurate reflection of what another side believes. And that's why that responding back, if I say to the Black community, is this what you're feeling? And it really is, that brings the conversation forward. But if I say, like, Black on Black crime is the worst thing ever, well, that shows that I might not be listening to the pain in the moment. And that's going to make the response to that statement not fruitful.
Right. And that's why it's so much friction. Like, if we could just have conversations, because we might actually see that we have some things that we're saying that's the same. It's okay to be different, have differences, but we're just missing, because everyone is saying things and it causes a stress response and then anger and defensiveness. And so that's why the paraphrasing is so powerful.
Yeah.
The number, got two more. The last, I don't know what number we're on, but adjust your body language. What does that look like?
So attentive listening, I don't know if I'm doing it the best right now, but it's going to just be engaged. It's also not threatening, aggressive. We all have different, like, sometimes we're not even aware of how we can do that, but there's an openness. So a listener is not going to be like on edge where you're signaling that you can't wait to say the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
You're open, and that includes allowing space for pauses and silence. And the body posture just communicates, I'm here, I'm present, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. And also, I think nonverbal communication, we actually communicate more nonverbally than we do verbally. So, like, nodding head, like, I understand what you're saying. If you sit there like this, if I'm sitting there like this, it gives off a defensiveness. So, like, being facial expressions, watching your facial expressions. Sometimes, and especially if like, for me, I know sometimes I wear my expressions on my face, so I'm really mindful, especially when I'm having tough conversations, to show empathy and to show that I'm listening and I'm available and I want a positive outcome in the conversation.
Right.
And then the last one is use silence to your advantage. Silence, I think sometimes in conversations, silence can be awkward, but sometimes silence is so necessary because when you don't like silence, you just start talking, and then you may say, like, it makes you go into like something that you may not even mean to say because you just want to talk, and it's like listening sometimes requires silence. So I think that for me, what silence means. What does it mean for you?
Yeah, sometimes we have to allow for the uncomfortable to really promote the genuine, authentic change. Because especially in these kind of conversations, we want to fill the void. We want to show that we're woke. We want to show that we are a good white listener. And we can be so enthusiastic to do that we actually miss out on an opportunity to really hear the truth that is being said, and to allow a pause for reflection of the real heart of it. If you don't do that, I think sometimes you can rush and miss it.
Absolutely. And so I'm happy that you used the word rush, because what in ending this is that we don't need to rush. Like, we don't have to rush to solutions or rush to trying to be, we don't have to rush to, like, it's not going to happen overnight. Basically, we don't have to try to rush the process. We need solutions, we need restoration, we need reconciliation, but first we need to listen to one another, right? So thank you for listening and being a model of that in the white community. And I hope that I also reciprocate that, and that we listen to one another, you know, as human beings, right? So we're going to be having a restorative circle, and you want to kind of invite people to that, and tell them what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, so I was super impressed with Dina, and she modeled the restorative circle that I came across on Facebook, and it was just, man, it connected with me. I loved the way that she could speak so empathetically, intelligently to these complicated topics that we find ourselves in right now. And so as we've become friends, we thought, well, hey, let's try to do this and try to bridge some of the gap between our communities. I was mentioning to Dina today, I am a pastor in a small town in Troy, Idaho. And it's a very different context than you're in UCLA. Is that right, Dina?
Yes, I'm in Los Angeles, but I'm from Detroit, Michigan.
Okay, I'm from Detroit. And so we would like to have, and I'm going to let Dina lead on this. We're both social workers, but she has the expertise in restorative circles. And so she'll set some guidelines. And then we would like from you, if there's any topic that you would like addressed from like the Caucasian white perspective.
Or the African American Black perspective.
And then we're just going to have this conversation together. And I'm super thankful for my friend Dina and her posts and her empathy. You know, the first time that I came across, and we'll talk more about this eventually, you responded to a perspective that was different than your own, but you set a tone, and you shared a story in an even vulnerable way that shaped the rest of the comments going forward. And that is so important for real conversation, but it's challenging because we have the temptation, you know, we want to speak the straight truth, and there's a place for that. And some people are called for that others aren't. So that just takes wisdom. But what we are going to try to do is delicately and carefully, through this empathetic listening that Dina just described, have a conversation, a real one, about race.
Absolutely. So you're invited. We're going to be doing it this Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and so that's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for my East Coast folks. And we invite you all to come and engage. It's going to be a place of respect, place of unity, a safe space. And so we invite you to come. We're going to be Facebook Live, and it'll be on both of our pages. So thank you for listening. Thank you for listening, Kevin. And I hope that we can ultimately reach a place of reconciliation between Blacks and whites, because that is, I think, our ultimate goal.
Yeah, and I think this is the way that it starts. It's small groups of people doing what they can within their own community and helping to show that this is possible, and modeling the way. So thank you, Dina.
Thank you.